There is a moment before every choice that feels like flying. You know the one. The half-second right before you say yes to the thing you already know you shouldn't. It never feels like a trap closing around you. It feels like a door swinging open in front of you. Nobody has ever walked into bondage thinking, "Today is the day I lose myself." That has never once been how it works. Nobody signs up to be enslaved. And yet, here you are. Here all of us are, with chains we recognize and can't quite remember choosing. It starts small, a single choice, one you are fully allowed to make, one that feels, for just a moment, like freedom itself, wearing its very best clothes. Here is what nobody ever warned you about. The most dangerous chains you carry were never dragged onto you by someone else. You picked them up yourself, and you were smiling when you did it. This is the second chain, not the one someone else built around you, the one you built, one small link at a time, and called it a choice. You are not the first person to carry this, and you were never meant to carry it forever. Here is the difference between a cage and this. A cage you can see the bars of. Someone built it. Someone put you inside it. Some part of you always knew you were trapped. But a chain you choose for yourself doesn't look like a cage. It looks like a door. It arrives dressed as relief, as reward, as you have earned this, as just this once, as everyone does this, and you're not everyone else. It comes wrapped in a feeling, usually a good one, at least at the start, and that feeling is the entire disguise. You are not foolish for missing it. It was built to be missed.
Think of it the way you think of a coating on something meant to go down easy. The outside tastes like nothing is wrong. The inside is already doing something else entirely, quietly, underneath where you can taste it. That's the design, not a cage with bars you could count and name, a chain with a finish on it, a shine, engineered to look exactly like liberty. It feels like control. It feels like power. It feels convincingly like I can stop the moment I want to. And for a while you can. That's precisely what makes it so believable. The first 10 times you probably could have stopped. That's the evidence it hands you. See, I'm still free. It lets you believe that right up until the day it stops being true. Here's what matters most. You were never the villain of this story for wanting relief, for wanting to feel alive, for reaching for a door. That desire is not your shame. It is proof you were built for something real. The tragedy was never that something disguised itself as good. The tragedy is that it barely had to disguise itself at all, because the ache underneath it was already real, and something answered that ache with a counterfeit before the true thing ever got the chance. So how does something that is quietly going to cost you everything manage to feel so harmless while it's happening? Because your eyes were pointed somewhere else the entire time. Not at the chain, never at the chain, at the feeling, at how good this is right now, at how alive you feel, how in control, how this time is different than the last time.
That is the mechanism. You were never foolish for missing it. You were aimed away from it. Deep down, most people already suspect what the thing actually is. The deception isn't really about what it is. It's about where you were told to look. You get shown the reward in vivid detail. Nobody ever shows you the link being welded shut behind you while you're admiring the view. This is why it never announces itself with a warning. There is no dramatic voice saying, "This is the choice that will hold you." It is quieter than that, smaller. 100 unremarkable moments stacked one on top of the other, each one so minor on its own that calling it significant would feel dramatic. That is exactly the point of it. Nothing that small should be able to hold anyone, so you stop watching for it. You stop checking whether you could still say no because why would you check? It's just a small thing, just this once, just tonight. Again, until the night you actually try to put it down and discover that you can't. That is the moment the disguise finally cracks, and you see what was always underneath it. Not a door, a chain. It was never as removable as it looked, and some part of you has known that for longer than you have admitted out loud. There is a diagnosis worth hearing now. Not a threat, a piece of the truest news anyone will ever tell you about how you were made.
Whatever you choose to obey, not whatever was forced on you, not whatever was done to you without your permission, whatever you choose. This is the truth sitting at the center of everything. Bondage, in this sense, is never something that just happens to you against your will. It is something entered one small obedience at a time, until the willingness stops even feeling like willingness and starts feeling like identity. You did not get drafted into this war. You enlisted quietly, one small yes after another. Here is the mercy hidden inside that hard truth. If you were the one who opened the door, you were never as powerless as the shame in your chest keeps insisting you are.
There is a second sentence that cuts even closer to where you actually live. Not some people, not people who go too far, further than you. Everyone. Hear the dignity hidden inside that word before you hear its weight. This is not a verse written for a specific category of person, set apart by the severity of their struggle. It describes what runs underneath the whole human story, every disguise, every different-looking chain built from the same architecture. You are not uniquely disqualified. You are simply human. And this word was written to find you exactly where you are, not to shame you for being there. Here is why this particular chain is so hard to name. Slavery, in this picture, does not feel like slavery while you are inside it. Nobody feels enslaved while doing the very thing they want to be doing. That is what separates it entirely from a cage someone else built for you. A cage you can rage against. You can see the bars and direct your anger at whoever put them there.
But who do you rage against when the hand that closed the chain was your own? This is where so many people quietly get stuck. Not in the sin itself, but in the shame of realizing they built it with their own hands. There is a particular kind of shame that whispers, if someone else did this to me, I am a victim. But I did this to myself, so I must simply be weak, broken, beyond repair. Hear this clearly, because it matters more than almost anything else here. That voice is not telling you the truth about who you are. It is building something new on top of the first chain. And that something new is the one you actually need freed from most. Because here is what happens next, almost every time, without exception. The moment you see the first chain clearly, the moment the disguise cracks and you realize you were never as free as you believed, a second chain begins forming immediately, and it forms faster than the first one ever did. It sounds like this: I am too far into this now, too far gone, too complicated, too much of a mess for anyone, especially God, to actually want to untangle. Notice exactly what that is, because it changes everything once you see it. It is not an accusation from outside you. No one said that to you. You said it about yourself. You looked at your own chain, decided it was uglier than anyone else's had ever been, and built a second structure directly on top of it, a private verdict declaring that this one, unlike every other one, doesn't get to be free.
Here is what needs to be said plainly, because you have likely never heard it said this way. Shame is not your verdict. Shame is the enemy's commentary on a case that was already closed. It is noise played over a courtroom that already reached its decision, and the decision was never guilty. Shame just keeps talking after the verdict, hoping you never notice the gavel already came down. That inner verdict feels realistic. It might even feel like humility, like you're simply being honest about how bad things are. Look closer. That is not humility. That is a cage, one you designed, one you installed, one you now guard from the inside, making sure nothing gets in and nothing gets out, especially not help. It is remarkable how much energy a person will spend maintaining a prison they built for themselves, checking the locks, reinforcing the walls, reminding themselves the moment hope shows up at the door that hope was never meant for someone like them. Hear this now. That second chain was never a life sentence. It was never even a real courtroom. It was self-forged from shame, wrapped around a chain that was already being dealt with by someone far more capable than your self-condemnation. You were never as far gone as the shame insisted. You were only ever as far as one honest look away from a door that was already open. So if the first chain was self-chosen, does that mean the way out has to be self-engineered too? Do you have to grit your way to freedom? Prove yourself worthy of it first before it's offered? No. And this is the sunrise this entire message has been building toward.
Not fear, not surveillance, not a checklist held over your head waiting for the moment you fail it. Liberty. Wherever that presence actually shows up, that is the atmosphere it brings with it. Not a tightening, but a loosening. Not a smaller room, a wider one than you have ever stood inside. Let that reframe everything you thought this relationship was supposed to feel like. It was never meant to feel like the cage you built for yourself, or the chain you mistook for a door on the way in. It was never meant to be a life spent flinching, waiting to be caught. It was built to expand what your one life could hold, not shrink it down to a set of rules you keep failing to keep. You were made for room, for reach, for sky. And here is something worth naming. A lot of people who finally slip one chain immediately go looking for a new set of rules to hold on to, as though freedom itself feels unsafe without new bars to stand behind. That impulse is understandable. Freedom can feel disorienting to a person who has only ever known captivity. But it is not the destiny you were made for. That is exactly why this gets said so plainly. Feel the shape of that sentence. It does not say, Christ set you loose so you could go build a better cage with nicer materials. It says, stay free. Do not trade one chain, dressed in the veneer of pleasure, for another chain, dressed in the veneer of righteousness. Both are still chains if what is driving them underneath is fear rather than relationship, performance rather than belonging.
Freedom was never the dangerous part of your story. Fear, disguised as discipline, that has always been the real danger. A faith that is genuinely alive does not feel like a box you are shrinking yourself to fit inside. It feels like room, like reach, like something wide enough to hold your entire story, the parts you are proud of and the parts you have never said out loud to anyone. All of it. Held, still loved. Here is the part that actually matters, because none of this changes a single thing in your life if it stays a beautiful idea about somebody else's chain. Somewhere in your life, right now, there is at least one thing still wearing the veneer of freedom, something that still gets to call itself a choice, something you could still technically defend as harmless, occasional, no big deal. You already know what it is. It surfaced the moment you started listening to this, whether you wanted to or not. That is not an accident. That is an invitation. Here is what you're being invited into. Not an assignment, not another rule to add to the pile. Stop letting that thing borrow the word freedom. Just for a moment, call it what it actually is. Not something I do sometimes, not my thing. A chain. Say the real word, even only to yourself, even only once. That act, naming it accurately, is the whole first step. Not fixing it in this moment, not defeating it in one afternoon of sheer will, simply refusing, for the first time, to keep calling a chain by a name it never deserved. Because the truth underneath all of this is almost startlingly simple, and it has been waiting for you this whole time. The first step toward being free is admitting, gently and honestly, that you are not free yet.
Not admitting it to prove how far gone you are. Not admitting it to confirm what the second chain, the shame-built one, has been whispering, that you are too complicated to help. Admitting it because that is the only door in this entire story that was ever actually a door. Every other one, the veneer, the disguise, the just this once, those were never doors. This is. There is a difference between a cage someone else builds around you and a chain you pick up yourself and call a choice. One takes noticing, the other takes honesty. But both of them, without exception, end the same way. Not with more effort, not with a better disguise, not with a stronger set of rules stacked on top of the old ones that already failed you. They end with a name spoken out loud and a hand reaching toward the one presence that was never, for a single moment, interested in keeping you small. Not partially free, not free with conditions attached in fine print, not free until the next veneer arrives wearing a better disguise than the last one wore. Truly free. That is the whole offer standing in front of you right now. Not a better chain, not a nicer cage with softer bars. An actual door. And this time, when you walk through it, you are not flying toward an illusion. You are walking into who you were always going to be. The version of you that was never meant to be defined by what held you, but by the one who came looking for you, found you exactly where you were, and called you free before you ever proved you deserved it. Go, not back into the old life, forward into the one you were actually built for. 1335. Love is the mark.